The story panel begins by showing the chaos in the dungeon. There you can see the hunters lying on the ground covered in red liquid. They all seem unable to deal with what they are fighting against at the moment. A man also didn't think that he would never feel something like this again. Yes, a helplessness he had experienced before. The man then coughed hard and released red fluid from his mouth. This man was also panting after using all his strength to conquer the monsters in the dungeon this time. A man appears who has brown hair and wears clothes like a typical young person. He was the one who was panting once again, thinking. At first he had thought that this conquest would have a different outcome. But unexpectedly, everything was bound to end just like this. The man then began to open his eyes and looked back at the enemy he was currently facing. In front of the man there appeared to be a monster whose size seemed very large. The monster is surrounded by fire, adding a threatening impression to hunters who want to fight it. This man then remembered his past memories again. So when he was little, he looked for his mother in one place. When his mother suddenly disappeared. And you know what happened, right? Yes, his mother was apparently eaten by a quite dangerous monster. At that time he could only watch and was unable to do anything. Like it or not, he could only cry and try to let go of his mother's departure. He repeatedly called his mother while crying. Yes, and under his eyes, the MC could only focus on seeing his mother being devoured by the monster. The MC could only focus on seeing his mother being devoured by the monster. His mother there appeared to be pointing her left hand as if asking her child to leave this place immediately. It seemed that what those bastards said was true. People who are not talented like our MC will definitely never be able to achieve anything. Even though the MC risked his life in training, he was just barely able to advance to Class B. His dream to become S rank? No, even reaching E rank is very difficult for the MC to achieve. The MC then rose again from his slump and tried to face the monster once again. It looks like this monster is the same monster that ate his mother at that time, even though the MC could be said to be stupid or an idiot. But does the monster know that the MC definitely won't give up that easily if he is faced with an annoying situation like this? The MC appears to be using his sword forward again and pointing it at the monster. So only with the determination of the MC's heart. Then it is certain that this monster will never make it out alive. The MC then started to shoot quickly upwards and was about to attack this monster. The MC appears to be jumping very high and trying to use his sword from top to bottom. Meanwhile for the monster just opened its mouth wide and was ready to eat the MC. The MC was completely convinced, then he started to smile. And his left eye suddenly changed color to blood red. Yes, the MC managed to land his attack on the monster. But of course, just by sticking a sword like that, it certainly won't have a significant effect. But at least it can hurt a little of the monsters. A moment later, the MC suddenly felt heavy pressure from below him. And after that, the MC then started crashing into the large rocks next to him. The crocodile monster seemed to feel pain after receiving the attack from the MC. The proof is that the monster is currently roaring very loudly. On the other hand, the MC, who had fallen on the rocks, seemed unable to move any further. He admitted that in his current situation he couldn't even use his hands anymore. Both of his hands appeared to be badly injured with quite deep wounds. However, what is certain is that the MC was sure that he had delivered an attack sufficient to injure the upper part of the monster. So if that was the case, the MC tried again to get up again and jump high again on the crocodile monster. With a loud shout from the MC managed to jump quite high and landed right on the crocodile monster's head. He landed right where he stuck the sword earlier. Well, since he can't use his hands anymore, then the MC inevitably has to use his mouth instead. Yes, the MC managed to pull out his sword using his strong jaw strength. And after the sword was drawn, the crocodile monster groaned loudly again. The crocodile monster is also now starting to direct its eyes towards the MC who is biting the sword with his jaw. The MC began to carry out his final move or attack. With his left eye glaring, a light blue aura then began to envelop the MC. The MC unexpectedly moved very quickly and launched a zigzag attack. And that's just by using the sword he holds in his jaw. The MC continued to deal damage to the monster. so that the monster was unable to stand up again. And as a result, he finally fell. With conditions as severe as these, it slowly started to rain. The MC is now seen lying on the ground with serious injuries. Apart from his hand, the MC has also been injured. Currently, he can only lie on the ground quite close to the crocodile monster. It can be seen that the crocodile monster really died only because of the last attack from the MC. The MC then smiled again while still panting. But the smile suddenly disappeared, the moment he realized that everything was now over. The MC was finally able to get his revenge, which he had planned long ago when he was little. Okay, so sometime before this incident, a group of young hunters were seen who were ready to enter a portal or gate. But before they carried out their conquest, of course there were instructions that were quite important for them to listen to. The guide then told them, the young people, about something before entering the gate. So before that, they all must have watched the latest news broadcast on television. One of the men asked to confirm. Does the guide mean a humanoid monster? Another added that based on what he heard, they meant humanoid monsters. It is known to be able to turn a human into a mummy form or something similar. After that, they completely absorbed the mana power that humans had. Because of that, only the human body was left dry without the slightest mana. Another female hunter had also heard about the recent incident that had occurred in the Songbukgu area. The guide then confirmed what they both said. He was sure that there would definitely be a lot of people talking about this for a while. Therefore, everyone is expected to be careful not to encounter this humanoid monster. You need to be careful here. Especially this boy in front of him. Yes, a boy without any talent is known as Jin Suho. So, our MC can be called Suho. Suho was asked to be careful when he entered the gate after this. Suho with a straight face said that he understood. The guide then asked Suho if Suho didn't feel offended by what he just said. The thing is, Suho was the only hunter in Class B who took part in the expedition this time. Therefore, the guide became worried about Suho. Suho didn't seem to dare look at the guide. And he just glanced down. The guide then added that he had actually heard that Suho used to be quite an exemplary student. Suho tried to deny this fact. However, the guide quickly replied that why Suho shouldn't be humble like that. The guide had even heard that Suho had also entered an elite academy in Korea. And what's more, he got the highest score among everyone who had registered. It was definitely an honor when they went on an expedition into the dungeon together with a smart person like Suho. The guide also asked the others about his words. They definitely agree with the facts just now. The others seemed to be laughing loudly and they looked down on Suho like that. Suho, who was annoyed to hear their teasing, then started to clench his right fist very tightly. In his heart, Suho asked himself how he could become like this. Yes, the model student with the highest grades is known as Jin Suho. Suho's past can be seen, who at that time received an award from the school principal. Initially, Suho thought that he was quite talented in everything. He thought that by becoming an exemplary and talented student like this, he could finally avenge his parents. Suho continues to achieve many things and succeed in all of these areas. But for this problem, no matter how hard Suho tries, this is still impossible for Suho to do. Yes, Suho at that time could only cry on the spot. When he saw everyone, he easily crossed this line. Yes, this is a picture of Suho seeing a line which is the limit for his steps. Every time fate taunts him, Suho always comforts himself. He always told himself to keep trying to get better. But in the end, Suho could only reach Hunter Class B rank, and he was ranked 26th in Class B. So, in a place like this, which is a portal to the dungeon, Suho began to realize that this was the limit. The guide then told them all to prepare to enter, including Jin Suho, who was behind him. He told Suho to move quickly and enter the gate. Another murmur came to Suho's ears that they said what was the point of being smart. They hoped that Suho will not be a burden for them in the future. Suho, who was used to hearing these insults, didn't flinch at all this time. This all means nothing to the current Suho. Suho then started walking and slowly wanted to enter the gate. So, why is Suho depressed about entering the dungeon? Even though he himself knew his limits, he was even looked down upon by others. Yes, that's probably because of Suho's desire to get revenge all this time. and it was Suho's stubbornness that made him refuse to accept the limitations he had. The others appeared to be entering the gate one by one, and Suho seemed to be watching them from a distance. Suho no longer cares even if he is called stubborn, because Suho now needs his ticket to be able to take revenge. Well, when everyone was in and Suho was the last one, Suho then took another step and put his left hand forward. Suho slowly started to enter the blood-red gate, and after he cast his spell, namely Modu's gate, Suho managed to enter it. However, when he just entered, Suho immediately closed one eye and prevented the dust from getting in. There, suddenly a scream was heard coming from the human who had entered earlier, and it made Suho stare in surprise. The sound of screams seemed to be heard from all corners. The voice seemed to be asking for help to be saved from something. Yes, apparently a terrible disaster with a probability of 0.002% finally occurred on this expedition. His other colleagues seemed to be asking for help with bulging eyes. The screams also didn't stop being heard around where Suho was standing. Suho started walking straight forward, then accidentally stepped on something beneath him. Yes, apparently it was the guide, who was now seriously injured and coughing up blood. The guide seemed to just stare while begging for help from anyone who heard him. Seeing the guide even react like that seemed to make Suho's expression change drastically. Suho, with a pale face, then slowly began to look forward. This is the disaster Suho referred to earlier. A disaster that took the life of Suho's mother 10 years ago. A crocodile monster appeared to be moaning loudly with its mouth looking very wide. Suho, who saw his eternal enemy in front of him, immediately put on an annoyed expression. Is this another reason for Suho? So he still intended to enter the dungeon. That was because he didn't want to lose when facing that creature. Suho then began to take out his long sword, and the sword then began to glow brightly. Suho told the crocodile monster to immediately attack him. The bastard monster who once broke his heart will definitely be defeated by Suho in this place. Well, in the midst of heavy rain like that, the plants around the MC finally started to get soaked. Suho's hand appeared to be badly injured after receiving a surprise attack from the crocodile monster earlier. Suho is now seen lying on his back on the empty ground while being hit by rainwater. The crocodile monster has also died as a result of the last attack that Suho launched. Suho initially laughed softly while putting on a smiling face. But that smile suddenly disappeared when he knew that all his revenge had ended here. Suho cried over his current condition. So, because the sadness still hasn't stopped, Suho then starts glancing at the monster while contemplating what Suho has been doing all this time. The revenge he took against the monster still wouldn't be able to restore the lives of his father and mother. So, then why was he so excited at the start to defeat that monster? Honestly, Suho himself didn't actually want this to happen. If only Suho had been strong from the start. Yes, if only he had been strong from the start, then surely his father and mother would still be alive today. Suho's tears then fell on the ground and immediately turned into red liquid. Well, and from the red liquid, Suho was immediately enveloped in black magic energy. The magic energy seemed to envelop Suho's left hand. And from there, someone's voice was heard which seemed like he was complaining because he found out that this boy was really his descendant. The dark magic energy continued to surround Suho's body and slowly formed a point. This voice admits that he is actually dissatisfied with this fate. But because everything had already flowed, this voice couldn't do anything to change that fate. Here we are shown occasional glimpses of the magic energy covering Suho from earlier. A moment later, Suho finally began to wake up from his stupor. He woke up in a shocked state. He quickly got up from his sleep and tried to sit up first. Suho, who saw that the surroundings were filled with fog, of course started asking about his current whereabouts. Suho even thought about whether he was now dead. But the person behind Suho replied that he was not dead. Suho's eyes seemed to bulge in surprise when he saw in the corner of his eye a person with long hair standing facing him. This person initially wore a flat expression. But a moment later his expression suddenly changed to a condescending expression. This person seemed to be watching Suho with his green eyes which looked very bright. Suho was apparently surprised when he saw the person wearing ancient traditional clothes. Suho with a face covered in cold sweat began to ask the person who he was. Knowing that Suho was asking in this condition, Suho answered. The person then sighed as if he couldn't believe it. Seeing how impudent Suho is now, it seemed like Suho had truly lost his memory of the person standing in front of him right now. The person then confirmed it to Suho again. If he really doesn't remember who he was before. Suho firmly told the person to quickly answer the question he asked, who exactly he was. But before Suho finished his sentence, the man then quickly took out his ring finger and middle finger to lift Suho's chin. This man then began to admit that he was the heavenly demon. With a grinning smile on his face, Suho's ancestor then began to continue that Suho was the only descendant he had at this time. Suho looked surprised when he found out that the man in front of him was his ancestor. Suho then shouted as if to make sure the temperature would end. Suho also said that he didn't hear wrong. Yes, so Heavenly Demon is a character who is known to everyone who loves Korean culture. He is a character whose level is in the heavens above the heavens. He is the one who deserves to be called the true strongest creature. Of course, Suho initially only thought that his figure was just an artificial or fictional character in which his character was shown a lot. Does the Heavenly Demon really exist in this world? And the fact that surprised him the most that he was the ancestor that Suho had. The ancestor then explained that of course this must be something that was difficult for Suho to believe. Because it seems in Suho's world, Murim or Cenobila themselves are only revealed as mere myths. However, the ancestor emphasized in more detail. This is a fact that Suho cannot deny. He is the true ancestor of Suho. And Suho is a direct descendant of him. Suho, who heard the ancestor's explanation just now, then started asking to confirm whether the ancestor had just read his mind. The ancestor continued, if it was something like mind reading, it would be very easy for him. Even the ancestor admitted that he could do this just by snapping his fingers. Suho here seemed silent after he listened to all the explanations. The aura that Suho was worried about felt very evil. This is indeed very difficult to believe. No matter how much Suho thinks, this aura doesn't seem to be the same as a spell or magic that comes from his world. Suho then asked the ancestor again. He said he brought him to this place. The ancestor, who thought that he was the one who brought Suho here, then said that it was ridiculous. What was the point of him bringing a lump of flesh like Suho to where he was now? The ancestor asked Suho to find out the place. Suho is just a lowly creature who looks very pathetic. Hearing all the insults he had received, Suho then began to retaliate. So if that's the case, it would be better for the ancestor to return him to his original world. But the ancestor cut again. If the purpose of coming here is to look for a demon or another demon, he was now looking for a figure who was the only rival he had, and this person was very annoying to him. The person or figure he was looking for was the blue demon or red liquid demon. If it weren't for that demon, the ancestor would definitely not have ended up in such a miserable state. Even though the ancestor himself rejected the fate that had turned him into a spirit, of course this left something for the ancestor personally, but even for an ancestor like him. It will certainly be very difficult to rule this world while looking for the blue demon without a body or physical body. A moment later, the situation became silent. The ancestor seemed to have an idea. So that you can get out of your current problem. The ancestor, after thinking for a long time, finally decided that this method seemed to work very well. Suho didn't seem to understand at all. With what the ancestor was looking for, meaning. The ancestor then began to emphasize that the key was in Suho. Yes, as an only descendant, Suho certainly has a body that is somehow useful for the ancestors to use. The ancestor then walked over to Suho and started patting him on the shoulder. Here, the ancestor told Suho to give his physical body to him, hearing the request from the ancestors. Of course, Suho turned pale and shocked. The ancestor asked Suho to consider his request as an honor. You see, the ancestor will return to live in this world. By using Suho's lowly body, Suho quickly slapped the ancestor's hand away and asked what his request meant. Why is Suho even giving his body for free to someone as obscure as his ancestor? However, after he said that angrily, Suho then felt a threatening aura suddenly emitted by the ancestor. The ancestor apparently was not happy when he was treated rudely by the only descendant he had. He in a threatening tone again told Suho that how dare he even forget his position. The ancestor stepped slowly again and approached Suho. But this time he was enveloped in dark magic energy. The ancestor emphasized again, if Suho had no other choice in fulfilling this request. Here, the ancestor looks surprised when he sees Suho's reaction from a fairly close distance. Unexpectedly, Suho was apparently able to withstand the eerie aura he had been emitting earlier. Suho was seen just looking at the ancestor with a serious expression. Honestly, Suho feels it here. If this powerful and at the same time terrifying energy felt like it wanted to penetrate through Suho's hands. But for some reason, Suho felt that he didn't feel threatened at all. With this one terrifying energy. Is it because Suho is a blood descendant of him? Yes, the point is, Suho doesn't know what happened. But it seemed like the ancestor felt uncomfortable when he saw that all his actions were not going according to what he had planned. The ancestor immediately understood what was happening. He then remembered a promise again that he had made with his wife before. At that time, the wife asked the heavenly demon to promise with all her heart that the demon would never have intended to harm those related to him by blood. His wife will continue to protect him no matter what happens. Remembering these memories made the ancestor's expression change drastically. And he heard about why he even remembered the promise again. The ancestor then asked the boy in front of him what his name was. Suho replied that he could be called Suho, or Suho's direct name. The assumption is Jin Suho. The ancestor seemed to understand Suho's explanation, and after that the ancestor began to explain that Suho did indeed have an arrogant nature. But because of the kindness of the ancestor, he will give Suho the opportunity of a lifetime at this time. Suho once again didn't understand the offer this time. Suho reiterated that he didn't need anything else. So, because Suho remained stubborn, the ancestor then started to issue the main sentence. He asked to confirm that Suho must have lost the family he had. Everything could happen because of how weak Suho was. Suho must have kept replaying these words in his mind. Would both of them definitely live if Suho could become stronger? Suho must have thought that he could definitely protect them with that great power. However, that was all in the past. Suho certainly knew for sure that this thought was naive, and they will never be able to come back alive again. Suho, who once again discovered that the ancestor had read his mind, then told the ancestor to stop doing whatever he wanted, or Suho will kill the ancestor right now. Hearing that Suho wanted to kill him immediately made the ancestor laugh. Yes, this is what he wants from Suho. A nature of anger and also a nature of revenge. The ancestor continued that it was a pathetic lowly human like Suho who couldn't cross his limits because he was carried away by his trash emotions. And Suho is no different from the others. Indeed, Suho has tried his best. However, Suho will definitely realize that that is the only limit Suho has. Suho, who looked very annoyed, then started shouting and told the ancestor to be quiet. However, before Suho's emotions escalated further, the ancestor decided to get straight to the point. So in essence, the ancestor can help Suho to overcome his limitations. Hearing the explanation just now, of course, made Suho interested. The ancestor continued that he would just tell him this straight away. So, the methods taught by hunters in this world were completely unsuitable for that Suho to learn. That's because Suho himself comes from his lineage. Apparently, Suho has only been able to rise to rank B so far because his teaching methods are not in line with his lineage. Suho, in other words, needs martial arts in his life. Yes, the strongest martial art in the Murim world. This martial art was none other than Heavenly Demon's martial art. Suho, who knows that he can become stronger, then started to grasp his right hand and said nervously that he could become stronger. The ancestor confirmed this. As one of the strongest martial arts in Murim, even trash humans can become stronger than anyone. And for someone who was equal to him, the ancestor was sure that the method he would give later. It certainly won't be difficult for Suho to learn. So, if Suho complied with his request and was willing to give him his body, then Suho would definitely be stronger. However, because Suho was caught up in his thoughts of becoming stronger, only a few of the words that the ancestor spoke could be listened to. Suho then replied again that he refused to give him his body. So, even though this offer was quite attractive, Suho still decided not to hand over his body to the ancestor. The ancestor didn't expect Suho to act otherwise, from his intentions that he had gathered in his heart. And here, the ancestor calls Suho a fool. Well, because Suho is still not sure. So if that's the case, the ancestor then intends to give a trial. Yes, a trial. So, if Suho can pass this trial, then the ancestor will teach Suho about cultivation techniques and also about internal energy. However, if Suho fails, the ancestor will take Suho's body completely. The ancestor tried to convince Suho. If this is definitely not a bad offer. The ancestor asked Suho for an answer regarding his offer just now, knowing that this was an offer from a devil. Instantly made Suho realize that he should have rejected the offer he had made. Because Suho himself doesn't know what will happen when the trial starts. But, apart from that, what if Suho instead provided an opportunity? What if this was the last chance the ancestor gave him? Suho asked himself if he could be sure that in the future he would not regret his current decision. Suho then asked the ancestor if he surrendered himself, would the ancestor keep his promise. The ancestor immediately promised using the name of his great figure. Did Suho think that he, who had surpassed death, would definitely boast energy in a situation like this? Not long after, Suho decided to accept the trial. And Suho asked the ancestor what the trial was about. The ancestor then said that there was only one step. Suho was asked to take one step, namely to get away from the despair that Suho had. And Suho was only asked to stand in front of him. The ancestor then started snapping his fingers. And immediately Suho felt a tense aura once again. This time everything looked reddish. And the ancestor's whereabouts suddenly disappeared without knowing where. A moment later, Suho heard the voice of a small child trying to call his mother. Yes, this is a past memory that Suho has. The mother appears to be telling little Suho to stay here while hiding. The mother gave the reason that in the future there would definitely be someone who would try to find the whereabouts of little Suho. And little Suho was asked by his mother to hide. Until then. After the mother said that, the mother then left in front of little Suho. Little Suho was seen calling for his mother, and asked his mother not to leave him alone in this place. After showing Suho's meeting with the ancestor, we then move on to showing Suho's memories before his mother's death. There you can see the mother holding up her index finger in front of her lips. The mother seemed to ask Suho, "Don't be noisy and stay hidden." In front of the two of them, there was a burning flame. After that, the mother then ran and left, leaving Suho behind alone. Suho shouted loudly for his mother not to go. But a moment later, the mother seemed to stop in the middle of the road. Next to him there was also a monster's mouth ready to devour him. Suho behind him could only watch. And his mother was devoured by the monster. Here we can also see that adult Suho is also standing next to little Suho. This was done deliberately by the ancestor so that Suho could hand over his entire body to him. Red liquid seemed to splash everywhere. The mother there was seen already in the monster's mouth. It was at this moment that Suho thought that it would be better if he just died with his mother. The sound of cracking bones being broken was heard clearly by little Suho. And the adult Suho there could only stare at himself, crying in fear. After seeing his mother sacrifice herself for him, little Suho finally left and ran back. If only Suho had died with his mother at that time, then Suho now would no longer have to suffer so much. Suho then saw a second path in his life after that. There you can see teenage Suho sitting on his knees in the shadows of the crowd. In front of Suho, a system panel suddenly appeared which showed that Suho's genie was ranked 35th. If he died at that time, then he wouldn't have to feel disappointed. Moreover, Suho discovered the fact that he was very helpless and weak. Here we can also hear the words of the people around us. They questioned Suho's abilities from the beginning until now. Initially they thought that Suho had a good performance at the start. But it turns out that his ranking has now dropped drastically. They concluded that it was because Suho himself had reached his limit. Honestly, being a hunter is just about talent. What is meant here is talent from birth. Hunters will not be recognized without any talent from birth. And they heard that Suho didn't want to try hard even though Suho knew he was terrible. If he had been Suho, then he would have stopped being a hunter a long time ago. Besides, isn't Suho great for being able to stay in this industry? Even though Suho himself is not talented at all. They felt that Suho believed in one thing. But before their words were finished, Suho, a teenager, was already emotional. He said in his heart, telling everyone to be quiet. What do they really know about Suho's suffering all this time? Suho admitted that he had spent his whole life training hard. And by working hard like that, Suho can now be in his current ranking. Suho judged that they all didn't know anything regarding the feelings that Suho experienced, starting from the death of his mother in the mouth of a monster to his hard work. Suho is now increasingly consumed with emotion after seeing all the bitter memories. And this situation was what the ancestors expected from earlier. Suho was told to entrust his heart to his anger. And if Suho has the power of the ancestors, so he could defeat all the trash in front of Suho easily. And is Suho sure he will let those bitter memories repeat themselves? After hearing the whisper from the ancestor, Suho could only remain silent with a blank stare. A moment later he heard the voice of his mother slowly walking towards him. The mother called her child's name in a confused tone. The mother asked why and why Suho let her mother die alone. The face of the mother was seen crying when she faced her child again. The mother asked if Suho had just been running away like a loser all this time. Is that the only thing Suho can do? Suho appeared to be walking backwards and refused to approach his mother. The mother again asked Suho to come to her. The mother asked Suho to be with her so that the mother's cold could be reduced. The mother could only beg her eldest son to return to her arms. However, because Suho still seemed doubtful, the ancestor then asked Suho again why he was doubtful. Suho was told to quickly approach his mother on the other side. Isn't she the mother figure that Suho has always wanted to meet again? Or don't tell me Suho will leave him again for the second time. Suho was firmly told to approach the figure. After Suho was right in front of the figure called his mother by his ancestors, Suho initially only remained silent for a moment. After that he said firmly that no, and this was not what he expected. Hearing his grandson's refusal, the ancestor immediately asked what he meant. Suho, without any hesitation, immediately started raising the sword behind him. Suho found a sword in his right hand and stabbed the sword into the stomach of the figure who he said was Suho's mother. Suddenly the figure vomited red liquid and screamed in pain. Tears also appeared to come out of his eyes after he was suddenly stabbed. Suho then told the figure that his method was a big mistake. The thing is, Suho really understands that his mother would never blame Suho to that extent. Suho recalled the bitter memories of when his mother was devoured at that time. Suho clearly heard his words telling him to run and live his life. That's why Suho concluded that his mother was not an authoritarian and pushy person. So, after Suho said that, suddenly the illusory dimension that enveloped Suho finally shattered into pieces. And Suho then started talking back to his ancestral figure. Suho told him that playing with someone's feelings is cruel. So by doing all this, has Suho won his bet? The ancestor behind him just stared with a shocked expression as he said in his heart, "How could this happen? He was supposed to be a weak child." But strangely, the aura around the child suddenly turned thick. The ancestor began to be interested in this child. After saying this in his heart, the ancestor then responded to Suho's words by admitting that Suho had passed his test. Knowing that Suho had won, Suho asked the ancestor to say something to him. Didn't the ancestor tell the story earlier? If he knew about how to become stronger. The ancestor responded by asking why Suho was in such a hurry. Transferring inner energy is also a process. Suho, who heard the phrase transferring internal energy, then fearfully said whether the result would be the same. But the ancestor immediately clarified that in this process he would not take Suho's body. At least for now. The ancestor promised that he would not take Suho's body unless Suho met him first. Suho, who heard the ancestor's promise just now, asked himself whether he could believe his words. But at least Suho knew very well that the ancestor's power was real. If Suho wasn't upset, then the ancestor certainly wouldn't be able to do anything either. And if that wasn't the case, then the ancestor would have already succeeded in seizing Suho's body by force. Suho then began to agree if that was the only condition the ancestor gave. But if the ancestor dares to do something stupid, So Suho will really get rid of the ancestor from his body. So the ancestor was asked to remember this carefully. The ancestor then put on a smiling expression. After that he praised Suho by saying, "Good job, my descendants. And if that's the case, let's see how long Suho will last." Here the ancestor began to release his black magic energy in front of Suho again. And the ancestor did not hesitate to approach and transfer that energy into Suho's body. The ancestor's presence suddenly disappeared, and Suho is now starting to be enveloped by the dark energy of his previous ancestors. Suho wondered what happened to his body. However, the ancestor immediately replied that Suho should feel honored to be able to serve his ancestors. And apart from that, Suho suddenly felt the presence of an object that was speeding towards him. This object is similar in shape to the kunai that ninjas have. Luckily, because Suho had good reflexes, Suho ended up dodging the long-range attack. After Suho looked again, it turned out that what was thrown at him was a sword. The ancestor told Suho again that this time the ancestor would make an exception. So the ancestor will lend his strength so that Suho can survive this battle. First of all, the ancestor wanted Suho to fight the pests that came from the blood cult. Suddenly in front of Suho at this time, a fog appeared which showed that many people were targeting him. Some of them even wore red clothes as if they were special people in the cult. The person began to draw the sword from his waist, after which the person quickly ran towards Suho. Suho here was ordered by the ancestor to cut down the ninja. Suho, who didn't know what to do, suddenly felt his body start to move by itself. Suho also started to draw his sword and gave one wind slash towards the ninja who had approached him. And it appeared that the ninja was suddenly split into two parts. Seeing what just happened made the others alert. A moment later the system panel appeared right in front of Suho's head. The system panel informed that Suho had absorbed the spirit of the heavenly demon. After the system panel conveyed that, the ancestor then asked his grandson what Suho thought about this power. Suho honestly didn't understand what the ancestor meant, and what happened to his body moving on its own. The system panel appeared again and informed Suho that Suho's body had evolved to the next level. And Suho has obtained a new skill tree. Suho has obtained part of the power of the heavenly demon divine art. It seemed that many ninjas were now approaching Suho, but Suho, without the slightest flinch, then began to deliver further slashes towards the cultists. On average, everything that approached him was split into two. Suho in his heart didn't seem to want to believe that this was the true power of the heavenly demon ancestor. Suho seemed to continue running and approach the next enemy. In Suho's head, the ancestor told him again that this power was indeed very great, but the power that Suho used was still only a small drop of his entire power. So the more Suho can accept the ancestor within himself, the more this power will slowly grow and become everything that Suho wants. Suho replied that whether the ancestor thought that Suho would fall for what he just said. While cutting down the enemy in front of him, Suho also had to maintain his awareness. Suho felt that he had to stay focused in this fight. Suho must fight all the enemies in front of him for now. Suho then started pointing his right hand forward. And the system informed Suho that he had used the B-class S-bar or S-spear skill. The enemy who was currently running towards Suho was suddenly bombarded by an incredible number of S-spears. All the spears pierced the enemy's body precisely. After that, Suho jumped and slashed his sword at the enemy. As a result, everyone was slaughtered. As if he was not satisfied with that, Suho here started to activate a skill called Frozen Class B. The skill is also combined with the Class B S-spear skill, which means that the enemy in front of him cannot move and will immediately feel the S-spear from below. After activating the two skills just now, Suho started jumping again. And he gave another slashing attack to the enemies who were immobile due to the frozen skill. However, as a result of the attack just now, Suho seems to have suffered a slight injury to his cheek. And Suho rubbed it while sighing. The ancestor said to himself again that this child's ability to concentrate was not so bad. So when the ancestor succeeded in taking over his body, then maybe he could change back to his body, become something good. But even so, that number of enemies was too much for Suho as Greenhorn to face. Honestly, the ancestor refused to let Suho die in this place. So the ancestor took the initiative to give Suho a little help. Suho, his head covered in sweat, replied that he didn't need any help from him at all. The ancestor then gave the order to release the sword from Suho's grasp. Suddenly, Suho felt his body become stiff again. And his sword now fell on the floor due to the order from the ancestor just now. Suho, with a stiff body condition, then asked what his ancestor did to him. Suho really couldn't move his body. Suho also felt dangerous when he saw that the enemies were now about to attack him. But a moment later, the ancestor finally spoke again. That everything in this Murim world depends on his steps. So the small green flame he created immediately exploded in Suho's stiff chest. Suho couldn't do anything. Immediately, Suho's eyes, which initially looked normal, now began to change to angry mode. The ancestor finally cast the heavenly demon divine art skill. This skill is called the first technique. The ancestor's footsteps are now depicted through Suho's footsteps. And from there, an overflowing dark aura emerged from beneath his feet. This time the skill he activated was the heavenly demon stride of domination skill, which is where a dark aura began to envelop Suho's body. The dark aura quickly began to grow, which resulted in all approaching enemies finally being knocked away and disappearing instantly. This is the true power of the heavenly demon who is Suho's ancestor. The cult members appeared to be thrown backwards. Everything suddenly disappeared as if destroyed by a black hole. That dimension also seems to disappear. After that we are shown Suho, who is currently breathing heavily. Suho here doesn't seem to want to believe that all of this is the result of his actions. The ancestor chimed in again. He said that a result like this was not something Suho could do with his strength. Suho was even called a useless bastard by his ancestors. Suho wanted to deny and question his next actions. Suddenly he felt that his body was shaking violently again. Suho immediately knelt on the floor while enduring the pain. In his heart, Suho wondered what had happened. Why was his internal energy drained like this? The ancestor, who saw the impact that Suho felt, finally began to understand the situation. The situation was exactly what the ancestor had hoped for. Suho, who heard this statement, of course immediately looked at the ancestor with an unhappy look. Suho asked if it was possible that Suho had fallen into a trap from his ancestors all this time. Suho didn't want to believe that he had been tricked. Suho seemed to continue watching the ancestor before he fainted completely. There you can see the ancestor's face wearing a sly smiling expression. Suho kept asking in his heart whether he had been fooled by this person. The system panel appeared again and informed Suho that Suho had hunted 124 people including Blood Ghost. And Suho had also squeezed the energy inside Blood Ghost before. Because of that, the heavenly demon divine arts proficiency had now increased drastically. Shortly after Suho received the system message, Suho finally began to regain consciousness. Suho seemed to be in bed and he immediately opened his eyes. Suho suddenly got up from the bed and he screamed because he was panicked by what happened before. However, next to Suho's bed at this time, apparently there was an ancestor who had been waiting for Suho to wake up. Suho, who realized that the ancestor was nearby, then asked if the ancestor had been nearby. Suho replied, of course he had done that. Does Suho think that the ancestor was a trash person who liked to lie? But Suho apparently immediately confirmed the ancestor's statement just now. The ancestor, who was called a liar, then started calling Suho a bastard. In the ancestor's heart, he was actually quite grateful for this. At least Suho is more aware of what happens to him. Although the ancestor himself was not sure whether it was good or bad. Suho then tried to move both hands. After Suho fully regained consciousness, he finally asked the ancestor why he was previously able to use this ability. Does it have anything to do with the ancestor taking over his body for a moment? The ancestor said in his heart that this was actually a martial arts technique. But because he was curious about Suho's behavior, the ancestor asked Suho again what would Suho do if the ancestor said yes. Does Suho want to give his body completely? Suho, with an annoyed face, of course refused the offer. The ancestor asked back. So what does Suho think after using that power? Suho initially seemed silent and did not answer the ancestor's question. After that, Suho said that he actually didn't want to admit this. but the power he felt earlier felt truly extraordinary. Suho admitted that it was the most amazing thing he had ever seen in his life. The ancestor told him again that power was not even half of the true power of his heavenly demon divine art. The problem is that the ancestor has always been called by the nickname the ruler. In Jianghu, that is the nickname they call their ancestors. Suho seemed to clench his right hand after hearing the ancestor's statement just now. A moment later, Suho said again that he would avenge his parents. And to do that, Suho needs the ruling power of his ancestors. Plus so that Suho can use that power again. Then Suho had to kill the blood demons and take their inner energy once again. Suho asked his ancestors to confirm whether his guess was correct. The ancestor confirmed the theory explained by Suho. So if Suho already understands what he has to do, then it would be great if Suho was willing to give his body to him. Suho again of course refused the offer. Suho said that it was very funny, it would be better for the ancestor to die a second time. The problem is that in this situation, Suho is the one who will use the ancestor's power. Suho appeared to remove the tube attached to his arm even though red liquid was spurting from it. The ancestor again told Suho that he thought he would be quite entertained when he saw his boring descendant struggle so hard. The ancestor accepted Suho's challenge. If Suho can do that, then Suho is welcome to try. Suho here is seen walking out and then opening the window of his patient's room. Suho said in his heart, Suho knew that if he did this action he would die soon, but still Suho would not just give up on his revenge. Because Suho knows that he can become even stronger than before. Suho is sure that his life will change from now on. The reason is because Suho has decided not to give up. After Suho said that in his heart, someone suddenly entered Suho's patient's room. The person said that he had heard that Suho almost died. Suho of course turned around and wondered who had come. And after Suho saw the person who came to visit him, Suho was finally surprised. The person said again apparently it was Suho who was reportedly almost dead. It seemed like the person looked better than he thought. She was a blue-haired woman. After hearing the news that the dangerous dungeon had been cleared, they started calling the team leader because the management team had called him. There appeared to be many employees busy with their own affairs. The person said again to the team leader, if the head of management asks him to check the report regarding the mutated gate. The team leader replied that he would check the report later. But because the call was urgent, the person then explained the purpose of why he had called the team leader to appear. The goal is to interview new monsters that appear in the dungeon. Other employees appeared to apologize to the client as this matter was not under their department's legal jurisdiction. In essence, the team leader is asked to hand over all the materials related to the information from the mutation dungeon. They will take the path of stopping all media covering this incident. Others agreed with the plan. To be honest, there had never been a more noisy battlefield than the one currently occurring. So based on what the boss asks, then what they want to do. The team leader answered that this was the 8th time this situation had occurred. An incident of monsters that resemble humans absorbing mana from hunters. And plus, a mutated gate has reportedly appeared there. So tomorrow's morning news will certainly be very entertaining for many people. Of course, this is unlucky for the department. But even so, they still don't really know about this incident. His partner agreed even the leaders didn't know something so scary would suddenly appear from inside the gate. The team leader replied again that the management team were bastards, no one was doing their job properly. And does the state of the mutated gate really make sense? His colleagues quite agreed with that. But has the team leader heard about the story of someone who survived the gate mutation? Hearing that someone had survived certainly shocked the team leader. The team leader asked his colleague to explain this in more detail. His colleague continued that this person was the only one who came back alive from the incident. And what's worse, that person is someone they have known all along. The team leader definitely remembers this name. That person's name is Jin Suho. Hearing the name Jin Suho suddenly made the team leader stare in surprise. How could it not be? The team leader at that time was known to have entered Group D at the academy. And Group D had won the battle when dueling against someone there. Jin Suho at that time had surpassed Cha Xian and managed to become the top-ranking student at the academy he entered. The name Jin Suho certainly left the team leader speechless. His colleague also said that he was also very surprised after hearing the news. To be honest, he was a bit speechless, because he also thought that Suho might have something. The team leader immediately interrupted his colleague's explanation. He said that after all, that bastard did have something to be proud of. The team leader refuses to accept that he survived thanks to his powers. The team leader thought that this might just be pure luck. So his companion was asked to stop thinking about such useless things. And it's better to just do your work in the office. But his colleague immediately responded by telling the team leader that his department's performance had been very bad recently. So it would be better if the team leader, known as Hoesik, can fix this. Hoesik seemed annoyed after hearing his colleague's explanation just now. He also really hated his colleague's personality. After saying that, his colleague then went and conveyed Hoesik's orders to him. Besides, since the two of them have graduated, Hoesik always calls him trash when Jin Suho's name is mentioned. After showing a debate between two old friends, we are then shown Hoesik's memories of Jin Suho. The Jin Suho he knew was once a scared child, but after defeating himself at the academy back then, Hoesik began to harbor feelings of hatred for him. Jin Suho's gaze at that time had a huge impact on the person he is now. Hoesik appears to be taking a cigarette and he starts saying what a jerk. It turns out that geeky bastard is still hunting in dungeons to this day. Okay, after that we then return to Suho's current situation. The one who came to visit him was a woman named Cha Cyan. Cyan looked a little surprised knowing that Suho still remembered his name. Cyan seems to have brought a box of bottled milk for Suho. However, Suho, who was treated like that by Cyan, then asked him to just go home because Suho didn't have anything to say to him. But Cyan immediately replied if he otherwise had something to say. Cyan emphasized that what he wanted to convey was his advice. Cyan asked Suho why Suho never once listened to his advice. Cyan had long told Suho to stop being a hunter. The problem is that Suho on the field doesn't have the ability to be like that. How many more times does Cyan have to emphasize so that Suho can understand this advice? But Suho also responded back if he hadn't said it before, to stop interfering in the life Suho lives. Cyan replied that he was only stating a fact. Because he was fed up with hearing advice from Cyan, Suho didn't care what Cyan said anymore. Cyan was told to leave the patient's room. But Cyan also seems to be just as stubborn. Cyan told him again. In fact, Suho will only realize when Suho is stupidly dying and almost died like that time. Cyan wanted to say something important to Suho. But Suho immediately interrupted and told Cyan to leave right now. Suho here gave Cyan an annoyed look. Cyan, who was given an annoyed look like that, finally couldn't stand his worry any longer. Cyan began to understand and accept Suho's treatment of him. Cyan said that he would go as Suho wanted. Hearing what they were arguing about, the ancestor then appeared to Suho's right. The ancestor asked what the problem was and also who the fierce girl was. Suho replied and told him to shut up too. The ancestor, who was again kept quiet like that, then said that Suho's mouth and character were very disturbing. In short, after Cyan left the hospital, Cyan was seen approaching a car parked in front. The driver then asked Miss Cyan whether Miss Cyan's conversation with the person went smoothly. But Cyan replied that their conversation was not going very smoothly. The driver then remained silent for a moment. After that, he told Miss Cyan wouldn't it be better if Miss was honest, and said that Miss was very worried about him. The thing is, he's not someone who can change if he's just given a code. But Miss Cyan told him not to worry about that. Cyan told the driver to leave immediately because the driver had said that the next dungeon ride would start at dawn. The driver confirmed this and he will start driving from now on. After Cyan leaves, we are then shown Suho, who is cultivating. There he was seen sitting cross-legged while closing his eyes. A moment later, his cultivation finally finished. The system panel appeared in front of Suho and told him that Suho had obtained the heavenly inner energy mind technique. And this is still a basic type. Seeing what Suho got, the ancestor looked surprised next to him. It's possible that Suho only learned mind techniques when he was that old. The ancestor said that Suho was too late in learning the technique. The ancestor admitted that he alone had even learned it when he was young. But Suho immediately responded by telling the ancestor to keep quiet. The problem is that Suho is currently very tired. Actually, in the ancestor's heart, he called Suho a crazy bastard. How could Suho learn energy mind techniques in such a short time? Even though the ancestor knew that Suho was his descendant. But still, it remains a mystery to the personal ancestor. In short, after Suho had fully recovered, he was finally able to leave the hospital. Suho currently appears to be visiting a place with the ancestor by his side. After checking with Google Map, Suho asked if the ancestor was sure that this was the place they were going. This place is known to be a gate visited by novice hunters for training. Or in other words, this gate is a Class F gate. The ancestor, who also accompanied Suho wherever he went, then said that he was completely sure of this place. The problem is that the ancestor admitted that he had smelled the disgusting smell of the blood demon around this place. The ancestor was sure that they had already moved in this place. But even though the ancestor said so, Suho still didn't understand their purpose. Suho asked the ancestors for what purpose. Instead, they wanted to suck the mana from the novice hunters. And why did the blood demon carry out this action in secret? The ancestor replied that there was no need for him to understand how and why the cult did all this. Suho, who heard the floating answer just now, no longer is surprised as in the previous incident. In front of the two of them, there was now a portal gate for novice hunters. Their beginners could be easily spotted just by the clothes they wore. Namely, most of them wear sports clothes. To be honest, Suho wasn't worried about exploring this time. The problem is that there are enough people who are ready to enter the portal. The gate attendant, who is also the leader of the newbies, then started approaching Suho, and he apparently asked for Suho's identity so they could make a list of who would join. The rookie leader also asked Suho to say his name and rank. Suho revealed his identity, that his full name was Jin Suho. His current rank is still at rank B. Hearing that Suho was at rank B made the novice leader surprised. The reason is that a Class B hunter should not take the gate below him. The leader then asked Suho, did Suho not know that this gate was a special gate for the lowest rank, namely Class F? Suho explained that he went to this gate on purpose because he had his own reasons. And Suho asked if the team leader would be bothered because of Suho's presence in this place. The novice leader was of course not bothered by this. But the problem was his other hunter friends. Those behind seemed to be laughing with relief because there was a Class B hunter joining them this time. They were quite happy because they knew that their conquest would be easy. There was also a novice hunter there who also asked why there was a leader. They also explained that Hunter B had come here. Seeing that his colleague did not recognize Suho, this man then explained it to his fellow beginner. In fact, the person in rank B is known as Jin Suho. Jin Suho is rumored to be able to work globally. Hearing that the senior could work globally made the beginner ask again. What he meant was Jin Suho, who had always had dreams. But he couldn't succeed no matter how hard he tried. Hearing his colleague answer explicitly, the man then asked him to immediately shut up, because they were afraid that their voices would be heard directly by Suho. His colleague apologized in a panicked tone. After finding out that the person was Suho, the newbie friend continued to ask again. So what does Suho want to do? Suho cried to be in this place. The man replied that Suho's goal was not clear. Suho definitely wanted to forget his previous reputation and chose to show off in front of the new hunter. This man actually felt very annoyed because he saw someone who should have high hopes from many parties end up like this. Suho seemed to be walking straight and didn't care about the novice hunter's gaze at him. Seeing Suho walking in front of him, his newbie friend finally began to understand. It turns out that being a hunter seems to be a difficult thing. The man then said again, if only Suho had not entered the academy with the highest grades, then Suho would have been able to live in peace as a Class B hunter. But looking at the current situation, the man admitted that his situation was very sad. But it can't be helped because life in this world is known to be unfair. For example, Suho's wheel of life. Everyone seemed to be chatting with each other. Meanwhile, for Suho himself, it turns out he chose to be alone at the back while leaning against the wall. Here Suho started to tell the story that he used to like entering dungeons according to the joy in his heart. Because at that time, Suho understood that he had hope of becoming stronger. Suho, with burning confidence, finally started to enter the dungeon at that time. Hearing the story from Suho just now, the ancestor then responded that it was very ridiculous. It's possible that their descendants will end up trapped in their past glory. Suho replied while warning his ancestor that Suho had already told him before not to occasionally read his mind without permission. The ancestor responded that Suho looked very pathetic in his eyes, so he couldn't bear to respond. Besides, didn't Suho also say before that he wanted to use the power of the ancestors? But Suho seems to still be trapped in his past memories. Suho didn't seem to reply anything after the ancestor said that. But a moment later, someone started approaching and greeting Suho. Suho glanced at the person who approached him, who turned out to be a girl. Suho asked the girl what she wanted from him. The girl seemed shy about conveying her purpose. The pink blouse seemed to cover the beautiful and cute girl. Moments later, the girl, without even glancing at Suho, then handed him a paper. The girl tried to say shyly that she wanted Suho's autograph. Suho, who was unsure, was asked for an autograph, then confirmed to the girl again whether he was the one in question. The girl seemed to nod shyly. Between the two of them, there were many other children who were watching. They started gossiping that the person in question was the loner man. He's the highest scorer but has a lazy nature. Does the person in question, Suho, really have no other job? And besides, why did he come to this place? Did he intend to take his place among the new hunters? For them, it is very disgusting. After hearing all the gossip from the novice hunters, Suho said to the girl that it wouldn't be good for her to get Suho's autograph. But even though Suho refused, the girl certainly didn't mean it like that. The girl tried to explain that her aim was not to harm Suho. Hearing that reason made Suho ask again. So what was the girl's purpose in asking for his autograph? The girl finally started to tell the story that she was one of the survivors of the dungeon that Suho had completed some time ago. So if it weren't for Suho's services, the girl would definitely have died at that time. So the girl was able to survive until now thanks to Suho's diligent efforts to complete the dungeon. That's why the girl was willing to ask for Suho's autograph even in the midst of the annoyed gazes of novice hunters. Suho seemed silent after hearing the girl's explanation just now. Suho actually never thought that he had saved someone at that time. On the other hand, Suho always thought that he was not strong enough to do this. Suho here finally started to put on a smiling expression. Suho told the girl that he would sign it later. The girl seemed surprised to see Suho's reaction. Suho added again that he would give the autograph if the girl was still interested in completing this dungeon together. Hearing this, the girl looked cheerful and accepted the offer. The girl then repeatedly bowed her head as she thanked Suho. Suho responded because he had saved him that time. After expressing her thanks, the girl finally returned to her friend. There she was still blushing after expressing her wish directly. Honestly, the girl was very happy today. On the other hand, Suho continued walking and was about to go towards the portal. While walking, Suho also asked the ancestor about. Didn't the ancestor say that only hunter rank A and above could fight those blood ghosts? The ancestor answered Suho's question, and in fact there were many more monsters stronger than the cultists. But Suho here doesn't seem to care about the words of his ancestors. Instead, he was busy finding out who the highest hunter would be who would enter with them at this gate. It is known that the highest rank besides Suho is rank C there. Which means the ancestor immediately confirmed Suho's guess. So, if Suho doesn't save everyone here, then they will all definitely die in there. Suho understood that it seemed like he couldn't let his guard down one bit on his first day exploring the dungeon again. In short, after everyone gathered and formed a line, the gate officer then gave directions to the novice hunters. They will later be able to enter this dungeon after gathering in an orderly manner. The gate attendant then began to introduce a man next to him. This man is a rank C hunter known as Kong Byung-chul. so they will all be under the direction of Mr. Byung-chul. The gate attendant admitted that it was a bit difficult to get him to come here. So the officer hoped that they would all listen to what Sir said later. They are also expected to learn properly from it. And please remember to always be careful when you are in the dungeon. They answered yes simultaneously. And besides that, they also have a special guest on this exploration. Namely a Class B hunter known as Jin Suho. With Mr. Suho in this place, the officer felt that this conquest would not have any problems. Byung-chul then slowly stepped forward and approached Suho, who was behind him. Byung-chul tried to greet Suho in a nice way. Byung-chul said that it was an honor to be able to meet him in this place. Suho only acknowledged Byung-chul's greeting. And after that, the two of them started shaking hands with each other. Suho realized Byung-chul's hidden intentions. Just from his handshake, Suho already understood that this C-rank hunter seemed to want to pick a fight with him. Likewise with Byung-chul, he thinks that Suho is a piece of trash. Suho was able to reach rank B because he was supported by his past reputation. Byung-chul can't wait to get his promotion to rank B. By proving that Byung-chul will be better than Suho in conquering the dungeon this time. Here the ancestor who noticed the handshake of the two of them seemed quite curious about what that catfish face bastard would do. In short, after the two of them stepped into the dungeon, the others finally joined in. The novice hunters looked scared after entering this dungeon. The reason is that this dungeon is considered dark and the atmosphere is a bit strange. They are not sure that the future will be okay. Hearing the chatter of the beginners, Byung-chul immediately turned around and asked them not to be afraid. The problem is that what they are facing is nothing but Gate D. As long as they believe in each other's abilities, they will definitely move correctly. So they will be fine if they obey all those things. Suho behind him seemed to reply in his heart, saying that it was just nonsense. Anyone would know that this wasn't an F-class gate as it seemed. At least the gate they entered looked like a Class A gate or higher. Suho wondered whether Byung-chul was really a hunter or not. The ancestor then chimed in that trash always seemed to talk a lot. So people like that would always be around when the ancestors ruled the Murim world. Suho once again told the ancestor to be quiet. What Suho was worried about was that he was an uninvited guest. Suho thought that nothing would change if he tries to do something later. So Suho can only use this catfish for the start. Suho then started to say to Byung-chul that he would follow Byung-chul because Byung-chul was leading the expedition this time. But Suho thought it would be good if the two of them shared positions vertically. One at the front and the other at the back. Suho asked Byung-chul for an answer regarding his suggestion just now. Byung-chul, who was in a good condition in front of everyone, seemed to agree and allow Suho's suggestion. Besides, according to him, this is still a basic thing. In his heart, Byung-chul was curious about what Suho was planning to suggest that strategy. Does Suho think that he is the one who should decide on small things like that? What Suho doesn't know. Byung-chul intends to use Suho as his stepping stone so that he can move up to rank B. After saying all that in his heart, Byung-chul then shouted at everyone. Byung-chul gave instructions that their vision would be affected because of the fog in this dungeon. So make sure they are always close to the person in front of each other. And what to remember. Byung-chul said that their enemies in this dungeon weren't just monsters. But walking on a trip like this is also a test to become a real hunter. Here Suho and the ancestor said that Lele was really an idiot with a simple mind. And apparently they both said the same thing. Suho again told the ancestor to be quiet again. But the ancestor rejected this. The ancestor then asked Suho, "Will Suho on this expedition be okay?" The ancestor understood that Suho must have been aware of something hidden inside this gate. Suho, who heard the ancestor's words, then asked again if the ancestor knew the location of the cultists. However, the ancestor asked why Suho was asking such an obvious thing. Suho asked again where they were, but the ancestor seemed to just smile and slowly narrow his eyes. The ancestor said that they were right under the ground where Suho and the others were currently standing. Suddenly an earthquake occurred and something came out of the ground. Suho, who saw their presence, immediately told the others to quickly move away. The others now seemed panicked by what had suddenly happened. Everyone tried to run and save themselves. But while they were all panicking, someone suddenly screamed when he was stabbed in the back. Suho tried to see who the person who was grimacing just now was. And when Suho saw who it was, Suho immediately had a pale expression. That person is now no longer on the ground. Byung-chul has been attacked to death by someone unexpected. For a moment they just watched what happened. A moment later, the ancestor was also surprised. The ancestor said that it seemed like someone had trapped them from the start. The person seemed to be laughing and crying. The ancestor cried loudly while stabbing Byung-chul in front of him. That person was the girl who asked for Suho's autograph before. Here he seems to be laughing loudly but as if forced. He laughed with tears in his eyes. The girl seemed to be begging Suho and the others for help. Suho was silent for a moment, seeing the condition he was facing. This condition is a plot twist that Suho never expected. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video.